Hey guys, this is KSP with Tape, and today you join me for episode 2 of Operation BlackHawk ships. This is the one about the fighters up until now, and we start off with the infamous X-Wing fighter. This is the Mark II, which actually has working missiles, unlike the Mark I, which didn't, and kind of meant it had to kamikaze, if you saw the first Operation BlackHawk episode. Fairly simple, just kind of bit of fuel, bit of engines, a little bit of RCS, a tiny bit of power generation. It's X-Wings, obviously, that make it look super hype. And then just these really light missiles, which are just these octagonal struts with a couple of SRBs, which give them some nice speed and can do a bit of damage, but they're a bit unreliable. But they're alright. And it's actually probably a good idea to replace these stack separators with the couplers. They're more... I think they're better for this sort of thing. And to keep weight down, the kind of mount on which the missiles are mounted, made out of these little cubic struts, which weigh very little and are actually physicsless. Yeah, I think that's about it. They're fairly simple. I imagine the more fun bit about this episode will be putting them in space and making them fight to the death. So I will move on. I will see you in a second with the next ship. Yeah, I thought I'd just come back with this really briefly. This actually isn't the X-Wing Fighter Mark II, this is BlackHawk, or the X-Wing Fighter Mark I. Screwed up my words a little there. It's basically exactly the same, except these missiles are slightly different. And basically they're two struts which just tear apart, and these missiles aren't rotated, because if they're not rotated they'll destroy the other missile. Thought I'd just come into that, and this is BlackHawk, the original ship which destroyed the fighter around the moon. That is why this series is called Operation BlackHawk, because of a poorly made fighter. Anyway, I'll move on to that actual next fighter. I'll see you in a second. And I'm back with the Scout fighter. This is the first, the first Federation fighter we saw. The ship that was dispatched to the moon to take out BlackHawk, which went horribly and caused a huge war, which is only kind of slightly beginning. It is an SSTO, that's its kind of main thing, using Rapier engines so it can get quite a lot of mass to orbit. Its docking port is on the back, because that's kind of the best place for it, and it does need to dock to like a fueling station if it really wants to go anywhere, like the moon, for instance. Again, it's a fairly simple setup. It's this one can actually land unlike the X-Wing fighters. It carries these little missiles. They're all right, but you have to fire up the engines before you fire up before you decouple them. So that's a little annoying, but it'll do. Yeah, just the same kind of simple power generation. Very little RCS. The only RCS it has is in the pod, which is like hardly any. So I'd keep getting stuck if you're not careful with RCS. Yeah, I think that's kind of all of it. It doesn't, I think I took some of the liquid fuel, I took some of the oxidizer out of this tank because it doesn't need oxidizer for its ascent stage, because it's, you know, these Rapier engines in air-breathing mode, which is obviously why it has these ramjets. Yeah, I'll move on to the next fighter. Again, this will probably be more fun in actual space. Alright, you join me with the Morpheus fighter. It's actually named Shuttle, because the one named Morpheus doesn't have these missiles. The Morpheus fighter is the fighter that goes inside the carrier and was in a battle around Duna against the X-Wings and basically against the Imperial fleet. It's, you know, small and compact, but this arm is actually really effective. It kind of protected it quite nicely, except not in the last episode when I tore it apart with missiles. These missiles are the Hellfires, the little liquid-fueled ones, which are really powerful because they have a 30 kilonewton engine behind, like, no mass. This fuel setup is just so it's really short, so that it can, you know, be quite compact, and it just, you know, again, has simple power generation, very little RCS, although does it have I don't think it has extra RCS. I think it just has the RCS in the pod again, which is 7.5. Annoyingly, in stock KSP, this pod doesn't have an interior, which makes it annoying to aim. So yeah, that's not great. I think that's all of them up until now. Oh no, there is one more. I will see you in a second for that. This is the Heavy Fighter. in episode 2 it took out the spy satellite and the X-wings because it is quite a large fighter. It doesn't look great, incidentally, I don't think. It's alright, but it is just mainly built to carry huge, quite a large amount of missiles. I mean, it's got 4 of these little SRB missiles, which are quite effective. And it's got, you know, these larger versions of the Hellfires, a long range and give a really nice punch. These missiles work surprisingly well, actually. I think they're better with decouplers as opposed to stack separators, because these really ripped apart the X-wings. This is kind of quite armored, I guess. Like along the middle, it actually has these armor plates, and then these wings provide pretty good armor. When it was hit by the one of the X-wings missiles, it did pretty well. It's got a big engine, so it kind of can move quite fast, and it's got a lot of RCS, so it's maneuverable in battle. It is just a battle fighter. Probably would have been nice to have one of these out around Duna, because you know, probably would have tipped the tables and maybe even been able to take out the Imperial frigate, but it was not to be. We only took one ship out there. But yeah, I think that is all of them now. I'm just trying to think. That's all of the fighters. So I will see you in orbit with all of these things, I guess, for a nice little slugfest. Ooh, ooh. Yeah, may leave that in. That wasn't great. Okay, so now I have all of the fighters into orbit after that little hyper edit mishap you just saw. I just moved all of these into orbit with hyper edit because, you know, instead of launching and having to take lots of time, it was just quicker. And sometimes things like that happen. But anyway, I just want to have a quick, well, I say quick little missile test. I'm just going to kind of mess around with all of the missiles. This is actually post-commentary now because it took me quite a while to do this, and there's quite a lot of false attempts and things, and stuff didn't quite go right. So I decided it would probably be best to cut it up and make it less, you know, mind-numbing, me missing and stuff, because they are actually quite hard to aim, a lot of the ships, and a lot of the missiles aren't amazingly effective, or the fighters hold together surprisingly well, especially that heavy fighter and the scout fighter. Like now, I'm just going to fire up these missiles, really close range, kind of back into the heavy fighter, and it knocks the scout fighter flying a bit, and then the scout fighter knocks the X-wing, I think, but didn't really do any damage, because that scout fighter is like tough as nails. I mean, we'll switch to it now. You can see it is really tough, although it did smash up those missiles quite nicely. The missiles took out the missiles. But anyway, I've skipped ahead to the X-wing taking a little punt. It's gonna fire off its little missiles in a second. I think it's aiming at the heavy fighter. Yeah, there you go. Although the heavy fighter is really tough, so I'm not sure what it'll be able to do. I'm going to use the inside the cockpit nav ball to aim, because it is really good for aiming. Because you can zoom in on that nav ball and it makes quite a nice crosshair. I quite like it. That's a problem with the Morbius fighter, is it doesn't have that kind of cockpit and there's no interior. Those miss annoyingly, although they did fly quite straight, and that's often a problem with these. Like you saw there, they just fly off to the side, because I think those ones get damaged by the first ones. I will have to improve that for future battles. But now we'll see what the scout fighter can do with those light missiles. In the first episode, it did manage to hack a wing off an X-wing, and I know they can be quite effective, but they're a bit hit and miss. Sometimes they'll like tear apart a craft, and sometimes they'll just kind of bounce off. Because although now with the new update, those radial like little ant engines are quite a bit more powerful, because they used to only have 1 kilonewton of thrust, but now they have like 4. So they're 4 times as powerful. So we'll fire up the engines and let them go with the action group 1. And they do hit. That's quite a nice. It looks nice and fiery, but they weren't brilliantly effective. They didn't really do much. I think they hit the metal, which is pretty tough. If it had hit a wing, maybe it would destroy it. It is kind of all about where you hit stuff, and when you're like 100 meters away and you can just see a bit of a black outline, it's kind of hard to aim. So the heavy fighter will be the next to gang up on the X-wing, although that Morpheus fighter is in my way, so I think I'll just move it with some missiles. I did quite like doing that, just like, get out of my way. Yeah, there it goes. it's going to be quite angry, but it's really tiny compared to this thing. I do quite like how it looks next to it. It's like with the frigate last episode. It's like really tiny next to the huge carrier, but it deals such destruction. If you haven't seen that episode, I'd suggest watching it, because there's some nice tearing apart a carrier with a frigate. And it has started raining, so I'm probably going to have to speak over the rain. It has been raining so much recently. It was sunny for ages, and then it was like, nope. Anyway, I'm aiming from the cockpit again, and we'll fire at the spacecraft. Although it is quite far away, so I would have to really pinpoint it, and I think those ones missed. But nevertheless, we'll... oh, I think I fired them all off then. I fired all 4 missiles, but they were too far away, so... we're going to use the other missiles and try and take out the scout fighter, but again, it's kind of side on, so it's going to be quite hard to hit. Gonna aim some more. Just there's a lot of aiming, really. This is what I try to cut out of the cinematics, because you know. But I thought it would probably be best to leave at least some of it in this video, as it is reviewing the ships, and this is a heavy part of it. If I ever did a kind of less cinematic and more live action-y things, I guess I'd have to do this. But anyway, we've got a shot going in. They look straight, but I think they do miss there. That's a little bit of a shame, but we'll skip ahead to something more interesting. Just shooting that ship. The explosions look great, but they're not really effective. It's kind of sad. But now I'm going to try and hit this moving target, which goes great, as you can see now. Yeah, those kind of pulled up again. Anyway, on to more interesting things. I just wonder what would happen if I did this again, and it went a little something like it's always like, oh, you have to kind of, I don't know. Okay, now we're firing them. Bit of a frame rate drop there, but I hit them. Everything's spinning and it looks cool, but nothing's really damaged. I'm getting kind of I really want it to, but anyway, we'll move ahead a bit and get some good old explosions in this. Kind of missed there. Again, these missiles, the ones with the Sephitrons and the hexagon, the octagon struts or whatever, they're like really inaccurate. They're only really good for really close stuff or hitting really big targets. And now I accidentally fire up the main engine and kind of accidentally pull a Sequestra and ram that ship. And that one, and it rips off my wing. And it did look pretty cool, but that wasn't my intention. I meant to fire up the engines on the missiles. But, you know, it looked cool. But the fighters were completely undamaged. It was the heavy fighter that got wrecked. But anyway, now we'll take a quick shot from the Morpheus fighter. I've turned that other one sideways, so it might make it a little easier to hit, I'm hoping. So yeah, let's see what this does. And I hit the wrong button. Yeah, building up the tension, and they fire off. And it hits the X-Wing. It looks kind of good. I can't really see the explosions clearing, but it looks like I've taken off a wing. If we switch over to it, we'll see. Oh, it is completely disintegrated. That ship is gone. That is, finally, I thought I'd end it with something nice like that. Yeah, so it did completely tear apart the ship. That is what the missiles can do if you get a good hit. Anyway, I do hope you've enjoyed this. I guess I'll just let this X-Wing turn around and miss with its missiles. But, yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you're enjoying this sort of thing. I've got lots of series in mind. I want to keep doing some Operation BlackHawk, but I'll need more time to kind of do it, because it's quite a lot of effort doing the cinematics and stuff. But I'm thinking of doing some more rescaled Kerbal things with, like, the realism overhaul stuff. Like, it just makes it loads easier, so I'm thinking maybe Duna or something. But anyway, yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. Like I say, this has been KSP with Tape. I will see you next time.